And as I'm looking at the prices that are listed on the website, I'm like, man, this is right on the verge of being not worth it to me. What is up, YouTube? Welcome to the video. Thank you all so much for stopping by. In today's video, I'm going to be tackling a somewhat difficult task, and that is giving my honest opinions and my true thoughts on the RP Hypertrophy app. Now, let me tell you guys, this app has been making waves in the fitness industry. It's one of the most used apps and platforms for people to build their training. It's popping off like crazy. It's got a ton of endorsements behind it. Even IFBB pros like Nick Walker, someone who's been as high as third in the world in bodybuilding, endorses this app. So I'm going to give you my honest thoughts, some critiques, some of the things I think it does well, and then tell you what I think we're all really concerned about. Is your investment going to be worth it? I hate to do it to you, but I'm so sorry I have to. If you wouldn't mind hitting the video with a like, hitting that subscribe button, ringing the notification bell, follow me on the socials, all those things you're supposed to say in YouTube videos. I'm trying to grow this channel, trying to bring you all some value and give some different perspectives to the fitness space. So that's what DMART training is all about. I have a podcast. It's called The Trainer Scoop. I host many of your favorite and to-be favorite fitness personalities on The Trainer Scoop. Got a ton of good guests, so go check that out. It's on this channel. It's on Apple Podcasts. It's on Spotify. Appreciate you guys. Before we start the review, I feel like it's definitely worth mentioning. Like, I'm a huge RP fan, but I'm not affiliated with the company in any kind of way. I've just been consuming their content maybe a little too regularly. Like, I think I've maybe missed, you could count it on one hand how many videos I've missed since the summer of 2020. So big fan of RP. You know, this app was designed by Dr. Mike Israetel and Jared Feather, who's an IFBB pro. So a lot of respect for those guys. So back in May of 2023, I believe it was May, maybe a little bit before that, Team Full ROM members were allowed to like alpha or beta test this app. And that's when I first got my hands on it. So it's been about 4 months now. I've been using it pretty religiously. I've never missed a workout without the app because it is that good in some ways. But I've been using it quite a bit, so I feel like I have a good lens to discuss pros and cons from. When you're reviewing a product, it's very important to consider price. So let's go over the pricing options real quick. I'll say maybe my thoughts on this were a little biased because I was offered the app at a discounted rate. So I am not exactly playing by the exact same rules as what some people are dealing with here. For the annual subscription, you're looking at $299.99, which pans out to about $24.99 a month. The 6-month option says it's the best value at $199.99 or $33.33 a month. And then the monthly option comes for $34.99. And I'll throw up the screenshot there just so you can see the breakdown real quick. There's different offerings for each level that you buy. And I'll go ahead and say it. All of the videos that Dr. Mike puts out on the RP page have been so informative and beneficial for my growth as a coach that I wanted to support this company. I wanted to pay with my dollars to support the work that they do. So that was a big factor in why I decided to buy a 6-month subscription. But man, as I think about it, looking at these prices, this is right on the verge of being not worth it to me. So for me, the app does a great job of tracking my volume, tracking the load that I'm using, and progressing my training. Pretty self-explanatory, right? That's what the app does. However, I found as a coach, sometimes my client load gets pretty heavy. Sometimes my client load gets pretty heavy, and programming for myself gets put on the back burner. When I have a client load, 15 to 20 clients, sometimes I just slack on my own programming, and then I find myself in the gym making decisions on the fly that might have been And then I find myself in the gym making decisions on the fly that might not truly be what's best for my goals. So the app is a really good organizer and tracker for your training. And I think it's also great for those individuals that don't want to invest. I've invested about 100 plus hours into learning about the RP way of training, learning the scientific principles of training, learning how they use factors like soreness and pump to adjust volume on a week-to-week basis, something that I'm passionate about, but not everyone's passionate about putting all of that time in to learn those principles. So this is like a shortcut. And I think that's what paying for this is. It's honestly a very, very useful shortcut to getting better programming. And I think the app does that especially well. But there's some not so great things too. But before we delve into my specific pros and cons, we talked about the pricing. Let's talk about the key features as it's listed on their website and then how these have panned out for myself in my training. So the app brags, I think they said there's 28 preset programs or the ability to design your own mesocycle. So I will say, if you just want to get in and see what RP training, see what Team Full ROM, all these RP things are in the Hypertrophy app, those preset mesocycles are pretty good. And the fact that there's so many to choose from, it's a nice feature. So designing your own mesocycle is what I do, just because I do know the principles behind these programs, and I think my own needs slightly differ now that I've kind of come a ways in my own training. So I love the mesocycle builder on this app. It's super easy. I use an app called PT Distinction where I program for my clients, and honestly the RP way is a little bit easier. There's just less mess, I'd say. So super simple and good user interface, at least when you're designing on a desktop. Everything, in my opinion, is degraded when you're on mobile, but I'll say I've designed mesocycles on my phone, and the mesocycle design is pretty easy either way, but it's a little bit quicker when you're on a desktop. On their website, they also mention that they donate a portion of the revenue to research, so that's pretty cool. Like, there's so much about hypertrophy training that we don't know, and that's still being studied. Even like the length and partials thing kind of shook up the industry this year. So there's still new things to be sought after and studied, and I'm a big fan that they're supporting research in that way. Another feature that is good to include is that there are 250 plus exercise tutorials from none other than my own personal gym crush, Jared Feather. Goddamn, Jared. I don't know if you're ever going to watch this, but fuck, I love you, dude. So it's nice to have that. Jared's form is great. There's little voiceover tutorials as well from Dr. Mike. So nothing like a little arousal to get you excited before you hit that heavy set and learn your form. And as I mentioned earlier, the app progresses your training. It adjusts it week to week based off of the feedback you give it, including pump, soreness, and workload. And it also asks if you have joint pain, probably so you make a mental note that you should avoid an exercise if it's always causing you joint pain. And then in the future, I think Dr. Mike might have mentioned about something including stimulus to fatigue. So it would be awesome to hear how the app could recommend exercises and recommend a training cycle based off of what has the best stimulus to fatigue ratio. We have price and features. So now it's time to talk about the specific pros and cons. And the first pro for myself, and probably for a lot of you out there listening, is that I've learned a lot from the way the app programs. Actually, since using the app, and take this with a grain of salt, I'm getting a little bit more advanced in my training, dialing my technique in, really using slow eccentrics, pausing reps, but my volume has dropped drastically. Sometimes I'll get a crazy pump off of just one set. I've started mesocycles with one set and then finished using 3. Some maybe even finish using 2 sets when I'm using intensity techniques, that is. So the app has taught me as a coach about some of the differences of progression, and man, like the reps that they recommend, it just feels good. Like the app is usually right on point. It's not going to push you too far to the point where you're breaking down form and it feels terrible. I really do feel like the recommendations are good on this programming. As I mentioned earlier, the tracking portion of this app just makes things so convenient. Like I would be tracking things in my notes earlier, and sometimes I forgot to do it. Sometimes it was just incoherent from week to week as I wanted to make progressions. But the app makes you record this feedback, and I like to do it in between sets while I'm resting. Sometimes people will like to do it at the end of their training. But the fact that it's making you give this feedback and it can automatically make progressions off of this, it's a pretty cool feature, I'm not going to lie. Another pro is that they are constantly making updates to this app. Like there's been a ton of improvements in the app since I've started using it just about 4 months ago, and they're dedicated to making it better over time, and that's something that I really respect. If you buy one of the bundles, there's tons of materials to teach you how to use the app to the best of its ability. I also just appreciate that they don't try to sell this app overly hard in the content. Like Dr. Mike always mentions, you can do this with the RP Hypertrophy app, but you don't have to. You can make this program yourself. You don't have to put money into our channel. At the end of the day, they're just there to educate and that makes me even more inclined to buy their product. Before we get into the cons, one thing I am a little bit neutral about is the fact that this is a web-based app and not an app store app. So take the RP Diet app, for example. The Diet app, which I've had great success with, crazy cut. That's why I wanted to try this Hypertrophy app, because I knew how good the Diet app was. Diet app is an actual app in the App Store. The Hypertrophy Training app is a web app. You kind of have to like rig the system and save the website as an app on your home screen. I'd probably describe that terribly, but it's not a legit App Store app, which is nice because they can make adjustments and improvements to it a little bit easier. But I have seen some people in the Team Full ROM have issues over the fact that it's a web app. Maybe they're running different operating systems than I have. Seems like most people with iPhones have no issues. But on the downside, if your gym doesn't have Wi-Fi or you can't get service or a combination of both, you can't really record your sets live and in action. So then you'd be recording your sets in a note and then transferring that over to the app, which is kind of like, at that point, I just program it myself because that's like additional steps. Still, it still could be worth it, but kind of an annoying feature if you don't have Wi-Fi or service. Not the best. So let's get into the cons, and there are a few very glaring cons that I want to address. This app simply is not for beginners. Even with all of the educational material that they provide you, you could go in and watch it, but if you're still getting into the gym, this is your first year, I think your results are going to be so skewed, and you should just, one, work with a coach for a year, or two, just say, screw it, I'm going to learn the hard way like we all did when we started in the gym. You might be doing some dumb stuff along the way. You might be doing some nonsense training, but it takes a couple of years to understand what true training intensity is, what good form is. And of course, this is majorly expedited by all the great educational information that RP puts out, but it is not for beginners. I've seen even people on the Team Full ROM forum reporting like 5 to 6 sets of leg press in their peak week mesocycle. And I'm just like, man, 5 sets of leg press. Like, I'm tempted to say you're doing something wrong if that's the case. Like, you are not rating things appropriately, or you're not training hard enough. That's just my feelings on it. I could be dead wrong, The second con is the price. Overall, it's not cheap, but especially on the month-to-month version, I don't see this app being worth $34.99 a month. I'm going to be honest with you. Because think about it this way, for like $20, $30 more, you could just hire a coach, and that would be like, you're using this app to simplify your life and to get programming recommendations. But if you can hire a coach that's going to do all that for you, that's going to educate you, and that is going to really personalize a training program for you and take all the work out of it, then yeah, I would just pay $20 or $30 more a month, try to find a coach that has reasonable prices. And then the last con is something that they're still working to improve, but tracking certain things isn't the most convenient. Like, it would be great to have a drop-down menu that lets you select if you used an intensity technique, what intensity technique. Maybe even someday it'll be able to program intensity techniques. Like, let's say you're doing a down set, for example, where you need to decrease your load. So you tell the app, I want to drop this weight from like 275 to 225. You have to go in, duplicate the exercise. There's not a way to change the weight that you're doing from set to set in the app, and I just feel like that's kind of strange and maybe even easily fixable. But the fact that it has to be the same load for every set, when that's not always how it practically pans out in the gym, is a weird thing that came to my mind. Alrighty guys, so let's wrap this review up. Here's my final thoughts for the app. This app is for people who want to take their training to the next level. They want that convenience of having their program done for themselves, and it is for someone who knows how to train to an adequate intensity, to the proximity to failure. It is to someone who knows how to correctly understand the feedback that you're supposed to give in terms of pumps, if they can get a pump, soreness, how sore they are. It is not for beginners or people that are brand new to the ecosystem, the RP ecosystem, let's say. You could be training for let's say 5 years, just doing whatever bullshit your favorite bodybuilder does. and buy this app. And I think it wouldn't be the best experience. So get yourself familiarized with the RP ecosystem and put that time into the gym to understand what adequate intensity is. Then I think you'll be good. My final recommendation though, try this app out for a month. Commit to a month. Honestly use it. Rank your feedback as accurate as possible. Really give it a shot for a month. And I think many people will be bought in after that month, and they'll go ahead and purchase a 6 or 12-month subscription. I think this is a good investment. You'll learn some things along the way that you can apply to your programming, even if you don't decide to go forward with this app. So give it a shot. Let me know if you have any questions. Drop them down below. I'm always down to chat about this stuff. Appreciate y'all for sticking with me through this. That's like 20-minute review at this point. So appreciate you for listening to me ramble on about something that I'm passionate about. I love the app. Can't wait to use it in my workout tomorrow. But like the video, subscribe, share this shit around, follow me on the socials. I think that's it. See you guys.